Welcome to the SPEAKPact podcast, where high-performing speakers and the producers who hire them merge to give you the insider secrets to the lucrative speaking industry. Antoniette Roze, your podcast host and celebrated speaker agent, unveils insider success strategies. Discover a nexus of thought leaders and bookers, maximizing your potential in each and every episode. Your ticket to ultimate speaking success begins right here. Catch the transformative insights waiting for you on the SPEAKPact podcast, hosted by the industry powerhouse herself, Antoniette Roze.
Welcome back to SPEAKPact. We are thrilled that you are here with us today. I have in the house the founder of Access Speakers, and we are going to dive in together on the place that podguesting has in the world of the speaking industry and the corporate training industry. And I've brought you the expert in that area. Welcome to the show, Anastasia.
Thank you. I so appreciate it. This is great. We've been wanting to do this for quite some time. It's nice to finally be recording instead of just having a direct conversation.
The direct conversations were great, but I'm very
They
happy
are helpful, yes.
So I'm going to say your name correctly. Anastasia, right? Lipske.
Yes.
Anastasia Lipske. And then you will get to know all about her, fall in love with her like I did, and we'll let you know how to get a hold of her as we go on. So I'm going to read your bio here real quick and we will dive right in.
Okay.
She is a speaker and podcast agency and has personally booked 1,800 plus engagements for her clients. She speaks the language of speaker chairs and podcast hosts, seeking great guests and speakers. Additionally, she consults her clients on how to better brand themselves so that she can share their message and attract clients. Well, you do have an energetic, just glowy personality, and we're just going to really enjoy diving in because you've been at this for years.
Yeah.
So let's face the elephant in the room. Like, why should anybody care about podcasts, especially if they don't have their own?
Well, and I'm going to go specific to speakers since this is primarily your audience. And if we had this conversation even 6 months ago, I don't know that I would have said some of the things that I want to point out because AI has really changed the game. So for a long time, I've been talking about one of the benefits of podcast guesting being the digital footprint. Now, as you know, initially tourism is what I did for most of my life. But then I ended up in the speaking space as a speaker agent, but a little different than what you do. Mm-hmm. But I had a lot of experience with booking people on stages, and I have a passion for speaking. Anything to use your voice. If you have a message, if you have something of value to share, you owe the world the opportunity to hear that. So it's like doing a disservice if you keep quiet. So I'm big about getting your message out there, whatever that might be. In the speaking world, you're a little more limited because it's more of a one-off. So you get in front of that conference or that meeting, or maybe it is even a virtual meeting and maybe it's even being recorded. But the vast majority of the time, it's staying within the people that are part of that community. Either they were the attendees themselves and they walk away from that conference and they don't get to hear you again, right? That it's done. It's a one and done. Or if it's a virtual thing, maybe they'll share the recording with the attendees or maybe the people that were invited, but it's not public. Right. So you are limited as to how many people that you can reach. Now, the difference, of course, is the depth of in-person, virtual talking to someone as opposed to it being, say, picking it up audio while you're walking your dog. But there's benefit and power to both. So in the podcasting world, you have a much broader reach. And you have the digital footprint. So all of these interviews that you're doing are out there and they will continue to be out there for forever. Unless a host actually takes their show down, most of them don't. If they quit doing their podcast, they still leave it out there. And so you got to think about not only the potential of being heard long after the fact. I mean, people literally can hear your interview 3 years after the fact. You don't get that type of longevity with speaking. So these are things that you want to have going because it's going to help you build your speaker presence. So you're more likely to get booked as a speaker. So now with AI, the searching is so much deeper. Every single time your name and your topic, your world that you know about is out there, you're going to increase the chances that an AI is going to pick you up and share about you with someone who might be inquiring. So those are things, it's the Google juice, Google juice, AI juice, all of that is building. You have the evergreen factor because it is long after the fact. I know that myself, like I would discover a new podcast. And I remember the very first podcast I ever listened to, Hal Elrod, Achieve Your Goals podcast. And I remember when I first heard him, I was blown away by it. And I went back to episode 001 and did a reverse play and listened to everything that guy did. That can happen with any good podcast. So a speaker has more opportunity to be heard, and they're going to come up higher in rankings, especially if an event planner is looking to see what's out there in the world about this particular person that they're considering. You want to come up higher.
Well, you hear all the time, coaches, consultants, all the classes you can get, workshops you can join, right?
Yeah.
Visibility, speakers need to be visible, be visibility, and focus on visibility. Yes, visibility is important, but you know what's more important and what's perfect, what podcasting perfectly does is it takes care of findability. The people
Yes.
who are looking for you, who need you
Yeah.
at the moment that they need you, people are go to certain podcasts, because they're looking for certain solutions and answers.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not buckshotting, and like you said, being visible
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really mean much if all the people looking at you really aren't the right kind of people.
100%. Yeah. Yep.
So be findable. And I don't know of any other. I mean, I'm obviously I'm a podcaster. I'm a top 10 at this recording. I'm a top 10%
Mm-hmm.
podcaster within 2 years. Super exciting, right? Great.
Yeah.
But still, I'm only going to reach my sphere of people. I
Right.
myself spend my time going on other people's podcasts and being where I'm needed, like
Mm-hmm.
being where people are looking for me. They may not find SpeakPact for whatever reason, but they have their favorites. And there's so many good reasons to be on a podcast. First one, you get your instant trust and likability because the person that they trust is trusting you. So that third
Mm-hmm.
party
Yeah.
validation, right
Exactly.
there.
Yeah.
Got that immediately. You're being put in the space where people are looking for the solutions that you bring. Like that's huge. You don't have to spend I mean, you can if you want to, but you don't have to spend ad dollars hoping you get the right people.
Mm-hmm.
You've already got the right people. And like you said, it's not a flash in the pan like an ad is. An ad's here,
Right.
then it's gone. It's forever. When the person is finally looking for what it is that you offer, you're there, right? Most podcasters will have their podcasts up on all the majors,
Mm-hmm.
and all those majors major in findability. They major in SEO and
Yeah.
AI and all of those things. So I don't know why some people begrudge it. Like I know you've gotten your speakers thousands. I think you said 1,800. It's probably more than that.
It is.
Um,
Yeah.
engagements, and us too. But when we get them onto like a top 2%, a top podcast, it's
Mhm.
like, well, that doesn't really count. Tell us why it counts.
You mean as far as the rankings are concerned?
No, as a speaking engagement. That doesn't really count as a speaking engagement.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, it is different. It's this is an interesting thing. So, in the speaking versus podcasting world, if someone has been podcasting, doing a lot of podcasting, that does not equate to them being a great speaker. So, an event planner is not going to consider paying this person $10,000 to keynote at a conference just because they've done a lot of podcasts. And I don't care how big the podcasts are, because there's something very different about carrying on a conversation as opposed to a prepared presentation. The reverse, though, is not the case. So a podcast host is actually a little more likely to bring on a guest who is a speaker, because there is this assumption, this credibility that they've built by being on stages, that one has to assume that they can at least carry on a conversation. If they can do a prepared presentation well, they theoretically should be able to carry a conversation. So it doesn't always equate between the two. So as far as a person thinking, oh, but a podcast, a talk is not the same, like if you're going on an interview. For those who are saying an interview is not the same as a talk, I sort of agree. I sort of agree, because it does take a different skill set to be able to do a prepared presentation than it does to have a conversation.
Yeah, I'm talking more in the space of being in front of the right fit people. No, some speakers
Oh,
will
yes.
take a
Okay.
paid engagement. Some people will take an engagement that isn't necessarily paid by the host, because they're going to get paid by the audience. So
Right.
that's as far as getting in front of a massive
Yeah.
right fit audience is the
Right.
direction I was going there.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. So in the speaking space, you usually have a little bit more of an aligned audience, just by nature of what happens. Whoever is invited to come and hear that person speak. Whereas podcasting, theoretically, my 10-year-old granddaughter could be listening to a podcast. So one might think, oh, I'm just spewing noise out there. But this is where it's very important that a person be very strategic. So there are a lot of people that are jumping in the podcasting game, becoming hosts, but also people who are jumping on the guesting game, and they think that all they need to do is show up and be interviewed and magic is going to happen. And it doesn't work that way. Where it starts right from the get go is making certain that you are on an aligned show. It is critical that a person really pay attention to whether the person that's likely to be listening is their target. What I see happen time and time again is people will organically be invited to be on a show, and they'll say yes, because who wouldn't want to be on a podcast, right? We're thinking, oh, but that digital footprint you're talking about, Anastasia, what about that? Well, that digital footprint doesn't matter if it's misaligned with your brand. You've got to make certain that everything lines up beautifully. I could be interviewed and talk about type 1 diabetes, what it's like to be a parent that has a child that has this. But then that's going to confuse everybody with my branding. It's no longer aligned with who I am and what I talk about, which is speaking and podcast guesting and hosting, and how to be aligned with your audience, right? So a speaker wants to make certain that that target is their ideal audience. Imagine them in a conference that they would have bought a ticket to come and hear you speak. And if you don't feel that that's likely to be the person on the other end of that, speaker or whatever, then don't do it, because it's not really going to serve you. Our time is valuable. We can't get that time back, even if you're not paying to be on that interview. But it's also going to confuse AI
Mm.
even more than the Google searches before. AI is really scrubbing everything that's out there. So you want to be really consistent. Would AI know who you are and who you want to get in front of if it were to look at every interview you've done up until now?
Mm.
And if you were going off in different directions, you're going to confuse the algorithm, and it's going to not get you the type of visibility that you look for. So is that a little bit more aligned with what you were
Well, that
looking
is
for?
so key. And that actually spills over to a whole nother area that we're not going to dive into. But if your LinkedIn page is describing you as one sort of person, and your speaker page is describing another
Yeah.
part of your expertise, and
Yeah.
then you're on all kinds of different podcasts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
there's not a rhythm and a rhyme, then you're right. You're really harming yourself. I deflect back to Seth Godin's something something purple cow book, right? You need to be very distinguishable
Hmm.
in a sea of other noises, other things going on. It needs to be
Yeah.
very clear what you're about. and what your expertise is and what you're the go-to for. So I hadn't really looked at that. We're very careful about the podcasts I get on, and
Hmm.
also about the guests I have on, because we're
Yeah.
not going to be talking about dog walking.
Right,
And
right, right.
we're going to be
Exactly.
talking
Yeah.
about topics that are of real value to speakers and corporate trainers. But I do, I do have other interests that would be fun to talk about. But it certainly wouldn't serve my audience and or myself, my own show. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Intentionality is not a nice have, it is a necessary. And it starts
Yeah.
with knowing who the heck you are. What is your superpower? Who
Yes.
is
Yeah.
the audience that leans in when you speak, because they're looking for that something that they've been missing.
Hmm.
They're looking for the bridge to the gap that they're facing. What
Right.
kind of bridge are you? Where are you taking
Yeah.
them?
Yeah. 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 I love it. I want to throw out a little tip if you don't mind.
You bet.
Just because a lot of people don't realize that, there are a lot of techniques to how to vet a show to make certain that it is aligned. And one of the easiest things to do is to look at, and I always recommend going to Apple Podcasts um, on a desktop, not from your phone. Okay. Just get on a desktop, search for a show, pull up the Apple version, and look at the last 10 guests that they've had on that show. What Apple does that's nice is that they'll have not only the topic title, but then they'll have below that 3 lines of text that describes what that particular episode is about. And by the way, to anyone who is a host, that is precious real estate. I see mistakes all the time where a host is talking about themselves or subscribe to my blah, 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 blah. And they just wasted all the space and not even know what that episode's about because I have to then click on something. We know people don't want to click, right? But you got to look at the last 10. They show 10 on one page, and then you can go further below that. Look at those 10 guests. Who have they been and what have they been talking about? Because if your ideal person would not be listening to the type of people that were on that show 10 guests before you, it's not going to be an aligned show. The exception to that rule is themed shows. So sometimes a host will have a theme and they'll, for 2 months, be talking about this. And then 2 months they talk about that. And therefore, the types of guests that are coming up is going to vary. But for the most part, that's a pretty good indicator. And a lot of people forget about that. So Apple Podcasts makes it easy for you to scroll through that and see who those last people were.
Oh, I love practical tips. That was a good one. Yeah, thank you for
Good,
that.
good,
So
good, good.
specifically, how can speakers grow their speaking business by getting on podcasts? How is it relevant to them growing their own careers without being
Hmm.
salesy? Obviously, when you get on
Right.
somebody's podcast, it's not to sell yourself, it's to genuinely give of your knowledge.
Yes, yes. So first off, it's the digital footprint that I'm talking about, okay, because you're building it. So the more you're out there speaking on your subject, whatever that
Your
might be,
expertise. Yep.
okay, the higher you're going to be found by people. Like we had talked just a little bit earlier, event planners are going to be looking at you and where you're showing up, and you want to make sure that you have this consistent brand and that you're continually there in your industry, your field, your expertise.
Yeah.
The other thing is just the mindset of being a speaker. So a lot of times people forget to really be describing themselves as a speaker, or they don't talk about the fact that they are speaking. In many cases, they are speaking because they have a business. So I'm a chiropractor and you talk all about being a chiropractor. Well, if you're on a podcast and you're a chiropractor who is a speaker and you're only talking about how people can take care of their backs and their necks or whatever. You're sharing your expertise, which is important. You want that. But you're not talking about the talks that you do. The fact that you're a speaker and I speak on this to blah, blah, blah. And you know what? I actually did a conference just 2 months ago. I keynoted and you're sharing this in your just dialogue that comes out
Hmm.
in this conversation. And I think people forget to have speaker be a part of who they are. Oftentimes people don't even think about it when they get introduced to someone. You go to a party and you meet someone for the first time and they say, "So what do you do?" "Oh, well, I'm a chiropractor." No, I'm a chiropractor and I speak about chiropractic too. Like people forget to have that mindset of I am a speaker. It is a part of my identity. Even if you are not a highly paid professional speaker, maybe you are like a lot of my clients have been, they are platform marketing speakers, speak to sell. They are the chiropractors of the world that are going out and talking to Rotary clubs. They're not pitching their stuff. They're just educating people on how to take care of their bodies, right? And there's going to be people that are going to resonate with them and they're going to come to meet with them in the back of the room and become their client. Or maybe their brother-in-law has a crick in his neck, right? So that idea of speaking as a marketing tool is incredibly effective and powerful because it's sample advertising. People are getting a taste for who you are and what you do. In particular, if your business is you, if you're a coach, right? Or you're guiding people in somehow to make their lives better, there's going to be those people that want to work with you because of what you have shared. So it's the same thing. You want to remember that you're a speaker, that you're not speaking on top of your day job, that speaking is who you are. It's just in your
Mhm.
essence, if you will. So I
I
hope
think
that helps.
podcasts, yeah, so many great insights there brought to my mind that podcasts are one of the very few places that I know of where you can reach B to C and B to B all at
Yes,
once.
absolutely. Yes, you
These are,
can.
yeah, these are people looking for solutions, and it
Right.
may be solutions for them,
Hmm.
um, and or sometimes both, sometimes
Yeah.
one over the other, looking for solutions for their companies
Hmm.
or for their employers.
Right.
And they hear you speak and you brought such insights. Why don't we bring Anastasia in to our organization so
Yeah.
that she can make some of those differences here? Your next best engagement is generally always from your last engagements where people got to
Yes.
truly experience you. In most podcasts, you don't even have to get in your car or get on an
Yeah. Yeah.
airplane, and you're
Right.
really achieving that same thing.
Yes. Yes. And you also want to communicate with the host before, during, and after. Okay. So not every host has a form. Like in your case, you have an actual form that you send to people where you ask them ahead of time, a little bit about themselves and what they might want your listeners to know about, etc. Not everybody does that. So if you're going to use podcast guesting as a strategy, you want to kind of take that into your own responsibility, if you will, by getting that information to the host. Now, I always recommend having a guest information document. So that's something that I had sent to you. That's also something that I linked to. So I have a free podcast guesting checklist that I always recommend that people use for every interview that they do. I did it. I've used it with you with this particular interview to make sure I've checked off all the boxes of all the things that I want to do before the interview. And then, of course, I'll keep checking them off afterwards. But in there, I do actually have a link to an example of a guest information document, or if anybody ever wants it, I'm happy to share mine. In that document, you have one document that you get to that host that's going to give them the bio for you. It's going to give them your headshot. It's going to give them what your microphone setup your whether you have headphones, like let them know what your studio setup is like so they know you're a professional. You're going to also get them, suggested conversation starters, etc. But you're going to feed that to them. You're also going to let them know who you are, that you are a speaker. And in particular, if you are looking for speaking opportunities, you're going to want to have that in that document and in the communication to this host, because that host has the potential of being the best referral source for you.
Mhm.
I I get on my soapbox about this all the time, but I cannot stress enough the importance of the podcast host. Now, at the end of the day, in podcasting, the most important thing is the listener. So, beyond anything else, You, Antonia, like anybody, whether you're guesting or you're hosting, it has to be about the listener. Are we providing value? Are they going to be glad that they listened to us for 15 minutes or 3 hours or whatever it might be, right? We have an obligation to be our best selves and be thinking about how we can bless the listener. But then, right beyond that, the responsibility of the host is to make certain that their guest loves working with them and feels there's a partnership here. And the guest must bless the host. And one of those things is making it easy for the host to know how to describe them, how to create the show notes so that they can have information in there that's going to lead people back to you. You don't want to just leave it up to the host, because I'm telling you, girl, I've seen it all. Okay. I am a booking agent. So I deal with podcast hosts every single day. This is one of the reasons why I do consulting with hosts, is I can see things that they are or are not doing that they could be doing better to upgrade. And one of the things I see is hosts not getting that information from the guest. So a guest cannot rely on a host to ask for what that information is about them. So I'm going a little bit deeper here, because this is just some general stuff that people need to know if they're going to use this as a guesting strategy. You need to provide that for the host to make it easier for them. And then you're more likely to control what they are saying about you. So speaker needs to be a big part of what that's about. If you leave that out and you're just talking about your business and what you talk about, and not that you're a speaker, they're not going to even think about recommending you to the next person that they know that's putting on a conference and is looking for someone. You just won't be top of mind. So you want to hand feed it to them. It does not mean that they're going to use it. Okay. You cannot have an attachment to what you create, this beautiful piece, and you give them all this information and they don't use any of it. You cannot have attachment to that, but you try as best you can to make it easier for them and have that identity a big part of who you are.
Yeah, I love what you said, and also be valuable. When
Yes.
I get a guest, well, first of all, my team screens them out. But if it's obvious that they have probably never even watched one of my episodes,
Right.
because they don't have any clue who my audience is, they're just
Mm-hmm.
ticking down the box. They're just,
Yep.
I'm a number, right? They're just putting in all the applications that they can. They see that I'm a ranked podcast, and we get. It's like, no.
Yeah.
You're not. It's so obvious that they're not coming to serve my audience. They're coming to
Yeah.
serve themselves, and I would not be serving my audience by letting people like that on. And sometimes they slip through the cracks, and I'm always so
Mm.
frustrated when that happens, because it's just self promotion all the way
Yep.
through, and they really
Yeah.
are not there to give. They're there to get. And it really does show through. So you're a professional that should be modeled. You did your homework on me to
Mm-hmm.
begin with. You really do understand who my audience is, and you care about my audience. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to be generous with them. And we may have some overlapping audiences as far as our professions outside
Right.
of
Right.
podcasting, but to me it's all reciprocal, right? It's all go
Yeah. Yeah.
give and
Absolutely.
receive.
Absolutely. I am astounded, utterly astounded at how many people are pitching themselves to podcasts, or maybe their VA is, or maybe they've hired someone to do it for them, whether it be an agency or a VA. There are some very bad ones out there. Okay. There are some good ones. I actually know a lot of great podcast booking agencies that I have referred people to, because I'm not the right fit for everybody. But there's a lot of bad ones, and they're popping up left and right. So people need to be very discerning. And where I see them making these huge mistakes is they're using AI and automation. It's
Mm.
not an individual, or they're not putting time into vetting a show to make sure that it's the right show. And the reason I know that they're not putting any time into it is because I get pitches literally every week. I get pitches from people who are telling me how great their client is and what a perfect fit they are for my show. I don't have a show. I've never had a show. Oh, it gets better because what I love is the booking agencies. I got another one today. The booking agencies that pitch me and tell me, like, they literally will say, I heard you on so and so's show. I really got a lot from your interview. I can get you on 12 podcasts in 2 months. And I go back to them like, really? You listened? Because if you had
Because you don't
listened,
know
you
who
would
I
know
am.
I am a booking agent. Hello. Y'all, you are ruining
Oh
it for the
gosh,
rest of us.
yeah.
So people, you need to be very discerning. But I
Mhm.
will tell you, because I work with hosts all the time, a host they're so disappointed in how many people do not take the time to listen to a show before asking to be on it. It is critical. So my litmus test, listen to an episode at least 5 or 10 minutes to make sure you energetically connect with the host. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to listen to an entire interview until you know you're booked. Okay. Because if a person were to listen to an hour-long interview every time they were vetting a show, they wouldn't ever get any work done. So you give it 5 or 10 minutes to make sure that you feel aligned. All right. And you get a sense of who that show is. You're going to look at those last 10 guests at the least. Look at all their stuff, how they're sharing it. Like, there's so many, I could go into so much of this. That's what in my consulting, I go deeper in all these things that you want to do to make sure that you're finding the right show. But you want to listen and ask yourself the question, would I like to sit in a cafe and have a cup with this person? Because if the answer is no, I don't care how big that show is, don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You will not energetically connect with that host. And people on the other end can hear it. I think we've all been there where we've heard an interview where you can just tell that they are not jiving. And you almost feel awkward for that conversation because it doesn't flow.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't serve the host, it doesn't serve the guest, and it doesn't serve the listeners. So try to make certain that you jive with that person. Who knows? Maybe there's some trauma from being in the corner in second grade and your teacher or whatever, and this person just reminds you of them, and that's enough, right? Who knows? It doesn't matter. But you owe it to a host to properly vet a show and put the time into making certain that you've heard it at least for a little bit, and then make certain, like, I listened to your show before we even agreed to all of this,
Mm-hmm.
but I listened to 2 full episodes just yesterday, so I would be really fresh on you. Because as you know, you and I, we've been meaning to do this for some time because I had those medical things that set me back. So people, you want to make sure that you listen first. You want to share with that host something that helps them to know that you listened, because the AI is out there scrubbing all this content. So that's why I'm getting these pitches, right, from AI agencies that are pitching me, and they've got the lingo down. They've making reference to episodes I've been on, and they're going to find things on show notes. They're going to make it sound like they actually had their client listen, but they didn't, because that's all just right there. But when
Yeah.
you can say, oh, and I love Star Wars too, because you happened to hear that host mentioned that they had a Star Wars Pez collection, that mwah, gold, because
Mm-hmm.
they know that you actually heard it. And you know what that tells the host? That you care.
Mm-hmm.
You cared enough to listen, that you're not going to use and abuse their platform. And people need to understand that most podcast hosts are not only not making money doing this, they're losing money doing this, because it costs a lot of money and a lot of time, sweat, tears, effort, you name it, to create this platform for the rest of us to use so we can get our message out. The
Yeah.
least we can do is honor that host by taking the time to make certain that we really feel we're aligned, that we can be of value to those listeners before we reach out,
Mm.
because it actually kills your brand. These people who have hired these bogus agencies, they just killed their brand, because I've just had them pitching that client to me who doesn't even have a show. And now I'm thinking like, ooh, this person, they weren't even discerning in who they hired.
Mm-hmm.
What does that tell me about them as a person of business? Do I really want to work with them? These are important things that have a lasting effect because we're human and we make these judgments about people. And so going out there and not presenting yourself in a professional way is going to hurt your brand. And everybody's connected, just like in the speaking world. Event planners know event planners. That's why you never want to be that diva speaker who's demanding and difficult to work with, right? Because they all talk to each other. But when you're the speaker that the event planners love, they refer you, they talk about you with other people. And same thing in the guesting space. Hosts know hosts, and they talk with each other. So you want to make sure that you're always coming from that space of how can I be of value? Take the time, make certain you're aligned, and communicate that so that the host knows that you spent that time really supporting them in that manner.
And that's genuine relationship. But that's
Yes.
what this industry is built on, is professional relationships. You don't have to be best
Yeah.
friends, but
No.
there has to be a level of trust, honor, respect, the things that are the glue for all
Mm-hmm.
relationships. When was the last time you automated a genuine relationship? It could be your significant other or your
Right?
best friend, and they're just
Yeah.
getting some automated emails just to know that you're alive, right? It just doesn't work. And it's the
Yeah.
same professionally. I think we're in the mindset that, oh, the numbers will do it. Well, maybe for some low quality
Mm-hmm.
things that pop up, but if you're a serious speaker or just a serious expert who cares about getting your message out there in an
Mm-hmm.
integral, genuine, authentic way that connects, you can't automate that. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm with you, Anastasia. I see it, and it just makes me want to. I mean, I have to compete against $99 agents, right?
Of
$99
course.
a month
Right.
agents, quote unquote. It's
Right.
like,
Right.
hopefully the smart ones can really see the
See the
difference.
difference. Yeah. And that's the value that you bring. So that, I think that these types of agencies that are popping up in both our spaces, they're so bad. I do believe that people are going to start to see that, and then they're going to value us even more. Because it's that personal connection, and it's that we know our industry. You've been doing this for a long time. So when people are working with you, you know all the ins and outs, not to mention the connections that you've made over the many years. So these event planners and conference organizers and meeting managers, they know you, they trust you, they it's like you are that endorsement. Anybody that you're representing, they know that that person coming through is going to be good, because why would you in your agency represent anybody who would damage your reputation? You just wouldn't. We're both going to be very discerning in who we have, because our clients are our billboards. So the smart people behind on the other end, the event planners and the podcast hosts, once they know me, and that's why they love working with me. Like I don't even know what the average acceptance percentage is right now in my industry, in the podcasting space, but I know I have a much higher acceptance rating
On
of
quality,
us.
rightly
Yeah,
matched.
right, because they know and they trust us, and because we go
Mhm.
through such careful vetting. We vet it, and then we have our client vet it. We don't just book our client. I have a different type of an agency. We are relational versus transactional in
Mhm.
everything that we do. And so I know that you do the same thing on your end too. So podcast hosts trust us. They
Mhm.
know if it's a client. There are hosts that, basically just say, here's my booking link. I trust you. I know that you're going to only suggest someone that is a good fit. I still won't do it. I still make them look at my client, because, like, what if, like, what if there's
Right.
something they don't jive or
Reminds them
whatever.
of
But
that fifth grade teacher they did.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So, but in your case, I know that these people that you work with time in, time out, they trust your recommendation, because it would be the kiss of death to your business for you to represent someone who wasn't a great speaker, or a speaker that was going to abuse the platform and be pitching themselves too much. Because, that happens in the speaking world just like it does, in fact, more. in the speaking world than it does in the podcasting world. Because that's one thing I will say, by the way, I'm going to toss this out there too, to all your speakers. Some differences speaking versus podcast guesting. Um, because a lot of people who were only speaking and then they're guesting for the first time don't realize that there really is not even an opportunity to make a pitch, if you will, from the podcasting space. The interview space doesn't allow for it just organically. If you listen to enough podcasts, the vast majority of interview shows, the host will straight up ask. They will ask you, how can people get further with you? Or is there something that people can do? What would you like them to know? That doesn't always happen in the speaking space.
You're
I wish
given
it did.
permission
Yeah.
to share to their audience. So let's demonstrate that.
Yeah. Okay.
How do you like to be found, Anastasia? Because I know that there are plenty of SpeakPact guests that are
Yes.
resonating with you and hearing what you're saying and are interested in
Yes.
learning
Yes.
more about what you have to say. So how do you like to be
Okay.
found?
Well, I'm gonna demonstrate within the demonstration because I want people to see and understand something. I feel like I'm looking at through an infinity mirror in India right here. But one thing that I highly suggest when you are being prompted for this to share information about who you are and what you do, don't read off this whole litany of all the places that you can be found. It is overwhelming. Something else that's different in the podcasting space is that the vast majority of the people who are listening, and if you're listening right now, okay, now we've got people who are listening live or watching live. So for you all, thank you for being here, by the way. But for those who are hearing it after the fact, you might be doing your dishes, walking your dog, on your commute, okay? You aren't able to write this stuff down. This is why show notes come in handy, but again, not every host is great with show notes, and people might not remember the show notes to go back to it when they finally get to work, and then they get caught up and their day's gone and they forget all about the, podcast they listened to that morning. So you want to make it very easy and something memorable instead of saying, oh, find me here, find me there. So I recommend that people have one dedicated page that they can lead people to, and everything is there and it's evergreen because you can change it. Some people recommend that you have a different ending to the URL so that they can track where a person came from. I think that's crazy making myself. I think it's just easier to have just one location. And so for me, the best way that people can reach me is simply to go to my website, which is accessspeakers.biz/thank you. That's it. accessspeakers.biz/thank you. And in there, you will see a page, and that's where I have my free opt-in, which I recommend that everybody have something that is of value that they can offer. And in my case, it's a podcast guesting checklist, but also all my socials. Well, my only social sandbox I play in is LinkedIn. Okay. So there's not a lot of socials there, just the one, because that's where I live. But if people want to reach out and connect with me, great. Please introduce yourself though, because I tend to ignore people who don't want to engage with me. I don't want to be just sold to just like everybody else. Right. So I'm going long, which I don't want people to go long. So ignore all that. I'm explaining.
It was a teaching
You
moment.
yeah, it's a teaching moment. You have this one place that you send them and you can change it. If I decide to offer something different than a podcast guesting checklist, that's okay. Because when somebody comes in here and let's say they're listening to this episode 3 years after the fact, okay, so if somebody is, thank you for listening again. But if they are, and they go to my thank you page, maybe it's not my podcast guesting checklist, but you can bet your sweet bippy it's going to be something of value to this particular listener because I know who your show is about and who it's for. So I'm only going to offer things that's going to be of value to them. So just have that one place, have everything there. Don't go on and on and on like I just did. Do as I say, not as I do, just because I want you to know you want to have that place.
That's brilliant advice because
Thank you.
you're right. This is a long-lived experience and someone is going to even, it's also on YouTube. We all go to
Yeah.
YouTube. We're looking for a certain kind of answer, and it could be a 5-year-old. It could have been uploaded 5 years ago, but it's
Yeah.
got the information you're looking for now.
Still relevant.
I
Yeah.
ran into this very recently, for a food plan. I listened to a show, and she said, go to this site and you get XYZ and XYZ specials. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so I went and I signed up, and they're like, oh, well, those have expired. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you didn't say that on your
Yeah.
page. Why didn't you say that on your page? I didn't care. I mean, it was still fine, but it's off-putting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Absolutely. Yeah.
great when you have that one spot, the newest information can be
Mm-hmm.
on there, and nobody feels duped or misled or bummed because the thing is no longer there. It's goes to a 40, is it 404
Yeah. Yeah.
page.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Oops. Duh. One of those things. Yeah. And speakers, you're going to want to keep in mind again that evergreen factor. Be evergreen in everything that you're saying. So again, if you are doing a meeting, or let's say you're doing a speak to sell, not we always hate calling it that, but that is the reality. Okay, you've got a workshop coming up, and so you're doing a presentation for a group, and you're talking about that workshop, and it is date driven. That works in the speaking space. It does not work in the podcasting space. You don't mention dates. You don't
Yeah.
talk about your upcoming spring special,
Mm,
okay? Because it's not going to be relevant. Remember, not only that, but so many podcasts, from the time that you actually have the interview, it literally could be 6 months down the line before
before
your
it's
interview
released.
comes out.
Yeah,
Yes.
really good point.
So, right,
Mhm.
it's got to, everything that we say has got to be evergreen in our conversations, because remember, it might be heard years afterwards too.
Yeah, gosh, time went by so fast, and there's a couple more questions I want to ask you if you can stay a little bit longer.
Please. Yeah,
I know that
absolutely.
we're going a little long, but what you just said was, I'd like to piggyback on that because that's such a valid point. I hear a lot of authors, or
Hmm.
people who are getting ready to launch something, that they will start getting on shows and they'll start promoting it once the thing is done, once the book is published, or
Oh,
once the launch is done. You're
too
so
late.
far behind. Yeah, you're so far behind the eight ball. If that's what you got to be doing it 6 months at least
Yeah.
to a year in
Yeah.
advance for just those reasons, and many more.
Yep, yep, yep. My business mentor, Katarina Rando, she has this funny thing that I can never remember exactly what she says, but it's something along the lines of stop thinking about getting ready to get going, or something like that. If you wait until everything is perfect before you then book that speaking engagement, or sign on with an agent such as yourself, right? You must run into this all the time, where people, they want to work with you, and yet they want to finish that book, they want to finish their website, they want to finish all these things, and you're like, but you want me booking you now, like, because I'm going to be booking for a conference 9 months from now, not next week. You don't want to wait until it's done. So I will tell you, in the podcasting space right now, because I do this every day, okay, they many shows are booking months in advance before you can even get the interview. First, you got to get through to even reach the host. Okay, now if all it took was one email, I wouldn't have a business. If it was that easy for someone to get booked
It
on
is
a speaking
sometimes
engagement, you
harder to
wouldn't.
get a ranking
Yeah,
podcast booking than an on-site
it's
speaking engagement.
because they are buried,
Hmm.
and they're everybody's jumping on the bandwagon, and they get 90% of them are probably bad pitches. Okay,
Hmm.
but how do they know? They've got to sift through that haystack trying to find that one needle in there, right? So they're overwhelmed, and so you got to keep that in mind. So it's hard to even get to them to begin with. This is where, honestly, having a booking agent can come in handy, or working with a service like Podmatch. Podmatch is my favorite resource for people who want to do guesting, or hosts that are looking for great guests. But it's a matchmaking service that I highly recommend. And I mean, I'm a member and I don't even need help getting booked on podcasts, obviously, but I support them because
It's
I
a
like
great
what they're doing.
resource.
Yeah, they're
Mhm.
great. So Podmatch is a great way to go, but you want to make certain that you are, getting it out there. And oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. Where was I? What was I talking about? I went off on Podmatch. Why did I? Oh my
What?
goodness. Okay,
No.
that's podcasting show notes. It's got to do with speaking. Oh yes, the reach outs and the timing. There we go. Just got to come circle back again. I open a lot of windows and I leave them open sometimes. That's just the way my popcorn brain works. So you want to know that some of these shows, they're inundated. So if you are lucky and you get a yes, they might not book you for an interview for 6 months. I mean, I have hosts that work with us and trust us that are saying, "Oh, come back to me in October. I can't even think about anybody right now." Then if I go when I go back to them in October, because that's what I do, we wait, we have a system, we'll go back, then they'll say, "Okay, great. Let me book them for December." And then they have their December interview, and then it's another 4 months before it actually airs.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to start now. It's like when you're getting booked to speak, you don't have to have your talk perfected. You've got to get the gigs. Simultaneous to that, you're working on your talk, but by the time you have that gig, you've got it down. But if you
Mm-hmm.
wait until your talk is perfect and then you reach out, you're going to miss all those conferences that might have been open to you. And then you got to wait another year, right?
Well,
So,
and not only that, but they're putting the cart before the horse. I mean, they're
yes.
building before they've collected the data, getting
Yeah.
out there and speaking and being on these shows and
Yeah.
doing the deep digging. You are not only collecting data on what people are responding to, what they're leaning into, what they're not, what they're
Hmm.
checking out from, but you're also collecting data on yourself. So you can build this whole perfect speaker page. You can build your demo reels, and I'm just going to come in there and dismantle it because it's portraying a brand that we're not building
Hmm.
together. So
Right.
it's backwards. Trying to get everything perfect, build it and they will come,
Yeah.
is the perfect way to not succeed and fail to launch,
Yes. Yes.
because
Yes.
it's never going to
Absolutely.
be perfect. Even when you get it quote unquote perfect, you're
Hmm.
every time you evolve, which if you're human, you should be, your
Yeah.
audience is evolving with you. Everything else is evolving as well. So it needs to be real time.
Hmm.
So I love that you said that. And actually, my next question goes right into that. What is, because I don't believe that neither of these are set it and forget it, one and done.
Right.
What are the key differences between a speaker one sheet, we
Hmm.
call them pro sheets, and a podcasting one sheet?
Yes. So the biggest mistake that people make when if they are coming from the speaker world, so your people are, and you've already had so many guest experts and you are an expert yourself. So I reckon by now, you've already done the talks on how to do a really great one sheet, because I see a lot of mistakes there as well. I've seen speakers who come to me who hired a branding agency who did their one sheet, and that branding agency, it's beautiful, but they don't know speaking, and the testimonials are about them and their business, not their testimonials about them as a speaker. Like they miss some
Mhm.
key
And it's
things.
more like
Or
a resume versus a
yes,
solution based.
they miss it, or I've even seen them where they don't have their contact information on there. So I've seen
Wow.
it all. I'm sure you have too. But then when people go from there and then they think, "Oh, I'm going to do a podcast one sheet that's geared towards that," the mistakes they make is the testimonials they carry over are about them as a speaker. No, you want testimonials from a podcast host. You want to make sure that you're not doing your topics where you normally, I mean, every one sheet's different. The format that I always liked was where you would have like your signature talk. So you have a really compelling topic title, you have a brief description, bullet points on key takeaways, and then maybe you have a few other of your, secondary, third topics or whatever, right? You have that broader uh, coverage on what you speak on, but it's really kind of honing in on that signature talk that you're doing. In the podcasting space, what usually serves a little bit better is to have some suggested questions, conversation starters. And these, again, doesn't necessarily mean that the host is going to ask those particular questions. And going back to that guest information document that I recommend that people use, you're giving them conversation starters, which I link to an example to in my guest information. Is like, again, infinity, right? You get the podcast guesting checklist and you get a link to the guest info doc. You click on that and you get a link to my conversation starters. So these will help a prospective host summarize some of the key things that you like to talk about. They may or may not use those questions, but now they know who you are and what you're about. So instead of going on a deeper topic, it's more some of the types of questions that they might ask. You
Thank you for
talking about
saying
being a
this,
speaker,
because
yeah.
you know that this is in my questionnaire, and you know how many times, Anastasia, that I get, well, you're the host, you come up with the questions, and that's
Oh,
really missing the point. Like I know my questions, and I'm good at asking them,
yeah,
but I only know you so much, and you may have this whole area
yeah,
of expertise that you want to talk about that I can't know without
right,
you answering
right,
those. But yeah, I get that a
exactly.
lot. Like, you're the host, you come up with the question.
Well, but
I'm not
then,
asking you to give me a list of questions to ask you. I'm wanting
right.
to know more about you.
Yes, yes. And if people are using guesting as a means to get booked to speak, or then you really want to make sure that there's something in there that conveys that you're a speaker, even in the questions that might be asked of you. So you want to, again, have that be a part of your identity. But these things, it's important that a person also makes certain that their conversation isn't hijacked. So if you leave it completely up to the host and the host starts going off in different directions that no longer is tied into what you really wanted to be on that show about to begin with, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for
Mhm.
in the end. Because and I no, so I'm not, there's this fine line, okay? Same thing, speak to sell, there's a fine line. How do you convey your value and get people to want to go further with you without it being a sales pitch? And
Mm.
you really don't want to do that in a podcast interview, but you also want to have some control over that conversation and where a person's talking about what they do. I've briefly mentioned that I do consulting. I didn't go into a lot of detail on it, but it's there. What if I had never mentioned that, or if you weren't asking me questions, like even the question about the difference in the one sheet? I think that that's really valuable information for your clients, and maybe you wouldn't have thought to even ask me that question. In fact, I don't even know what, I can't remember which ones I had. I gave you all my questions, and that's one of my questions. But you're asking me questions that were not there.
Mhm.
I know
Yep.
that. You're definitely asking me unique questions, and I love that. I want that.
Mhm.
It's a little bit of both. So we want to have some control so that we're meeting our needs of coming on and hoping that we have people that will resonate with us and want to work with us. But again, we're honoring the needs of the listener, and I'm honoring the needs of you who know the listener, by the way, better than I ever will. I
Mhm.
mean, I maybe I listened to if I had listened to every single episode you've ever done, I still would never know them the way that you know them. So I lean on you, you, Antoinette, oh my gosh, Antoniette, you get that all the time, I'm sure. Um,
At
I
least you
lean
didn't call
on
me
you.
internet. It's
Uh,
okay.
People call me Anastasia. So I know that you know your people. So of course I'm going to rely on you for that. But this is a give take. This is me giving you options. I'm
Mhm.
giving you this platter with all the charcuterie board, and you can choose what cheeses and salamis and meats you want because you know the taste of your listeners. I
Yeah.
don't. I don't. And so yes, people might say, "Oh, but that's exactly why I want the host to choose." No, you got to give them the charcuterie board to begin with.
And then
You
they can
know?
pick out what they want. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love the way you put
otherwise
that.
it's a fruit salad, right? They don't know. They don't know what you got.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of questions, I have my signature question for you.
Okay.
You know
Yes.
what it is, my last question of the show, because I want this to be an action-oriented show, and we are on a universal pact to make the
Mm-hmm.
greatest impact with the power of our voice as possible. That's what the show is about. I know it's what your whole career is about as well. If your voice doesn't get heard, then there are
Mm-hmm.
solutions that are not going to reach certain segments of people in the way they otherwise would. So you're holding back answers
Yeah.
and a bridge that fills gaps for people just by not getting your voice out there. There's
Yeah.
just, to me, there's nothing more uniquely you and infinitely valuable than stepping into your voice and sharing it. So along those lines, when it comes to podguesting,
Mm-hmm.
your area of expertise, please leave the Speak Pact audience with an actionable challenge or marching orders that they
Yeah.
can go out and do today that will make a difference in that area.
Okay. So this might not be something that you would expect that I would say because it's a very tactical thing, and let me explain the relevance of it. So I want to talk about the importance of doing a rating and review for the host of the show.
Mm.
And and a person might think, well, what does that matter? How does that affect me? Because if I want, okay, so we're in agreement. If you got a message and you don't share it with the world, you're doing the world a disservice. So we don't have to tell people get out there, right? They know that. But if you want to be able to reach more people and you've been invited to a podcast or you're going to be reaching out to one, but especially if you've been invited to one, you want to help grow that show. One of the best ways to help grow a show is through ratings and reviews. Now, if you do not have an iOS, you don't have an Apple phone, you cannot do an Apple review. If that's the case, then do a rating on one of the other podcast app, whatever it might be, Spotify, Podcast Guru, Pocket Cast, whatever, you name it,
Amazon. Mhm.
Amazon, any of them, do it somewhere or maybe a few places if you can. Some of them you have to listen to two, which I like, by the way. I like that they force you to do that. And so, if you've listened to your two full episodes, maybe that's where you stop. But there are a lot that you don't have to.
Yeah.
Apple, if you have an Apple, the reason why the Apple reviews really matter is that the Apple reviews directly relate to listen notes. Now, listen notes will never tell you that, but listen notes, and just so people know, listennotes.com is a place where you can go and get information about shows. You can research shows. You can use the free plan for quite some time and then they'll cut you off. But there's a lot of good stuff there. And they have their own rankings that they create that are not accurate. So don't just take it with a grain of salt. But what I can tell you is that if a show wants to rank higher on Listen Notes, how many Apple reviews they have will affect that.
Mm.
I know that because I'm in it. And so I've never seen a highly ranked show that had very few Apple reviews, and I've never seen shows that had a lot of Apple reviews that were not somewhat highly ranked. The best thing that you can do to help your show or a host grow their show, so you, dear listener, dear speaker here who's listening to me right now, you, by growing that show, are more likely to be heard, even after the fact. Again, it might be 3 years later. So do a review is also the right thing to do. Coming
Mm.
back to the fact that this host is putting a lot of effort into creating this platform so that and thank you very much for having me on this show. I appreciate that you've done this. So I have done a review on your show. These reviews help you as a host be found. And guess what? The bigger your show is, the higher likelihood there is of people getting ears to me speaking right now. So it is self-serving. It's not just the right thing to do to bless you, but it's also self-serving for me because if your show grows, I increase the chances of my message being heard by more people.
It's go
So, and
give. Yeah.
Yeah, you go give. And then one other little handy dandy tip that I do recommend is that capture that if you are doing like an Apple review and you can actually do a written review. Okay, I'm not talking just 5 stars. Okay, take 1 minute of your life to write something. Okay, but copy it and then send what that text was to the host. So I've done this with you. So that if you send it to the host, tell them I did this Apple review. If it doesn't show up, because Apple loses reviews,
Oh,
they've lost
interesting.
reviews. And there's nothing worse than 7 months after the fact finding out that my review was never posted. And then I got to try to remember what I liked about the show. No. So I always share it with the host and I tell them, I did this review for you. This is what I wrote. If it doesn't show up within a week, let me know and I will gladly resubmit it. That makes it easier for you in case it does get lost, but also it's letting the host know that you did it. Now, some people, their iTunes name might not, it might be Sunny Bunny 323. They have no idea that it's Anastasia Lipske. Now, in my case, my iTunes name is my name. So that's something else. Change your iTunes name, y'all. Okay. Make sure it is your name. Everything you do is branding. Everything. It's always branding. Have your name out there. That's just one more place where it's located, but let the host know. And then now they're going to like you even more, right?
Well, we
I
talked
mean,
about that. Like show hosts will, this is brilliant. This was worth going long for because it's so important in multifaceted ways. Yes, you're letting the host know that you appreciate
mhm,
the time and energy and money. Because like you said, most podcasters are putting more money out than they're receiving,
right.
but that they're doing all of that so that there is a platform for your voice. So that's your small way of
Yeah,
appreciating them. You are remembered. People do remember. They don't always remember what you say, but they always remember how you made them feel. And when you thank them in that way,
100%.
they're going to remember that. So you're not doing
Yeah.
it for this reason, but they're going to remember to refer you
Hmm.
when
Yeah.
another like people hang out with like people. When another
Yeah.
host comes around, hey, do you happen to know of a guest that can talk about ABC, or a speaking engagement comes along, that you make it really easy for them. So doing that, leaving that rating and review, huge. And at the same in the same way, share the show,
Oh,
share your
100%. Oh my
episode.
gosh. If you're not going to share it, don't do it. I mean, what's the point? Why would anybody be guesting and not sharing it? I don't even know. I have no,
I
but
would
yet
say only
people,
about
they forget.
20% of my guests actually share. They say they will, but they don't actually do it.
Oh my God. Okay. Now, to you, dear listener, who is listening right now, I also want to say, please do a review of Antoniette's show because that's going to help me. If you help her grow her show, more people will hear me. No, it's not about me. It's just it's people don't realize how valuable it is. There's this whole school of thought, just so people know, there are people who saying they're saying Apple reviews don't matter. Apple reviews don't matter to Apple. Apple does not use reviews when they consider shows that they're going to recommend. If you're in Apple Podcasts and you see these shows popping up left and right, it has nothing to do with the ratings and reviews. But people do. I
Hmm.
know I'll be at a local buy mart and I'm considering buying an air fryer. What do? I go to Amazon on my phone and I look at the reviews of that particular model before I decide to buy it in that store and walk out. We are driven to pay attention to reviews
And
and
so
we
you're
can't separate
benefiting
ourselves.
the community at large. Oh,
Absolutely.
sorry, there was a delay. Yeah, at large. To that point, I have, because of how important LinkedIn is for speakers, I have interviewed probably 5 different LinkedIn experts
Hmm.
over the course of the 2 years of this show. I'm dating this episode now at this
Oh, but
filming.
that's okay. No, that's absolutely. You can say that.
Of all of them, one of them was very generous in leaving a review and sharing it.
Hmm.
And when people come to me, and they often do, even my own clients,
Yeah.
is there a LinkedIn expert out there that I can go to really scale my LinkedIn page. Guess
Yeah.
who I recommend. It's
Yeah.
not because I'm necessarily thanking him or even necessarily thinking that he's particularly the best.
Right.
I remember him. He's the one that
Yes.
comes to my mind. So like you said, you're doing the community a favor, but inadvertently you're also doing yourself a good service as well.
It's the little things that matter. And that's why my podcast guesting checklist is really helpful, because you won't forget to do those things. And there's a lot of other great suggestions in there as to things that you can do to get the most out of every interview that you do, because it matters. Something else I do, I always do a LinkedIn review of the host. So I'm kind of letting the cat out of the bag, but I want people to understand, when we are finished here, within the next day or two, I'm actually going to do a LinkedIn recommendation of you, Antoniette, as a host.
Oh.
So when people are looking at your LinkedIn profile, there's going to be one more person who has done a recommendation on LinkedIn about what a great podcast host you are. The vast majority of people do not do that. I do handwritten thank you notes. I've had a podcast host do an entire post about the value of handwritten thank you notes because no one ever sends them. They stand out, and I'm not talking send out cards, okay?
No, it
And
is
I'm
beautiful to
sorry,
get
and
like
I
an
don't mean to
actual
say
pen
anything.
to ink to paper.
Right, with my sloppy writing and everything like that, like it's real. And I don't want to in any way diss something like a service like send out cards. Okay, so please, if anybody is selling that, please forgive me. But there is something to the personal touch. You know how long it takes for me to send a handwritten thank you note? 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know what stamps are, what, 70 cents, double that amount if the host is outside of the country. Okay, fine. But there's another host that my thank you note is still on the front page of his website, which just goes to show how many times he gets a thank you note. Like, that's crazy making. So these things help us to stand out. And we want to. That's the whole purpose. Do less interviews, but do them right.
Mm-hmm.
Go
Yeah.
big or go
Love it.
home.
And that's a perfect note to close on. I will say this has been such a jam-packed, beautiful insights show that I think that it has, I think that you have the record. I think this is my longest show. I'm pretty sure.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, I am loquacious, so there is that.
We wouldn't have hung out if we ran out of things to say. And you have really brought so much generosity to the SpeakPact audience. Thank you, Anastasia. Look Anastasia up. All of her details will be in the show notes. And her name is very unique, Anastasia.
As is yours.
Lipske.
Yes.
So you can't miss her. Definitely look her up on her website and LinkedIn. Give her the flowers. Like, let her know where you found her. And also let her know that you exist, because I know that you care about each and every person that reaches out to you.
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to connecting with any of your listeners who are interested. And you and I will stay in touch and continue this dialogue. And I know our paths are going to continue to cross. And I am just so grateful for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Fun show. Thank you.
Thank you,
Anastasia.
Thank you.
And to the SpeakPact audience that stuck with us for our historical longer podcast. I know that you got tons of value out of it. So thank you for sticking with us. Ciao for now.
Thank you for listening to the SpeakPact podcast. To become a recommended speaker of Antoniette's WPC speaker agency, or you are a host or planner looking for a dynamic expert in optimized performance, Antoniette would like to personally meet with you. Secure a time with her at speakerbooker.com. Again, that is speakerbooker.com. It all begins with a vision, a voice, and a pact to impact. Join the SpeakPact movement by joining our new private Facebook group at the link in our show notes. Find us on nearly every social media platform at One Antoniette. That's number 1 ANTONIETTE, or simply hashtag SpeakPact.